Hi, this is State Representative Jeffery Elmore, and I'm here today to share with you the annual session update from the North Carolina General Assembly and specifically the North Carolina House. I'm a little late in sharing this update because we've actually experienced one of the longest sessions in the history of the state due to negotiations with the governor's office with the state budget. Technically, we are still in session. We adjourned to a date certain, and session is still open due to possibilities of litigation dealing with the redistricting maps. That was a major event that took place dealing with redistricting due to the 10-year census. District 94, which I currently represent, is Wilkes and Alexander counties. It pretty much stays intact in the new maps, but Wilkes is in a new Senate district, which is called Senate District 36, which would be made up of Wilkes, Yadkin, Surry, and Alexander counties. What I'm going to share with you today are some highlights of the policy legislation that moved through the General Assembly, also some highlights of the budget, and then aspects that affect us locally in the district that were in the budget. And I'm going to break it down into different categories. So the first category is military and veterans. House Bill 53 assisted military families in qualifying for in-state tuition. That was not clear in the law, so this would allow for our military folks, our military bases here, to qualify for in-state tuition at our universities. Also, improve veterans' access to in-state tuitions in the UNC system. That was House Bill 602, which actually backed the policy up with the money. We also launched a program called No Veterans Left Behind, and this is to assist veterans with mental health support. We have found that with PTSD and other issues coming from serving, that there's a great need out there, and this is an innovative program that is very unique to us and was happy to see. Some Second Amendment issues that moved through the General Assembly this long session. We passed a bill, HB 398, which actually repealed the pistol permit requirement. That is the permit that you would get from the sheriff's office prior to purchasing a handgun. This bill moved through both chambers and was vetoed by the governor. We also passed a bill, HB 134, which would protect concealed carry holders in places of worship. This was tried to deal with issues of security teams that many of the churches maintain. This bill passed both chambers but was vetoed by the governor. Now, some highlights in education policy. We passed HB 324, which would have prohibited critical race theory in our schools. That was vetoed by the governor also. And HB 729 would have helped in expanded charter schools. This was vetoed by the governor. But several of the next items were not. HB 82 was something I worked on with the Speaker of the House, Tim Moore, to establish a summer school option this past summer to help the kids deal with the problems that arose from learning loss dealing with COVID last year. That passed and was implemented. We also passed the reopening of the schools for in-person instruction. That was Senate Bill 220. We passed enhanced reading plans and literacy intervention tools, Senate Bill 387, and this is to help improve our literacy rates for our third graders. We also passed a bill that would require monthly review by the local school boards dealing with the mask mandates as we still continue to deal with the pandemic. We also passed, to help with our teacher shortage, the ability for qualified college instructors to teach in grades K through 12 and it not affect their certification. This should help try to fill some of the voids that we are having with the teacher shortages. Some highlights from the healthcare sector. We passed HB 447, which protects the religious rights of hospital patients during the pandemic. We found that many of the regulations that the hospitals had would not allow for a spiritual leader or a person's pastor, basically, to come in and speak with them prior to death. That's what led to this bill. So this would entitle people to be able to meet with their religious person in a hospital stay. We also passed Senate Bill 228, which expanded small business health care options. This would allow for small businesses to pool together to purchase insurance for their employees. This could be very beneficial to the employees and the employers themselves because many of them are too small to carry health insurance options without being able to do some sort of pooling. We also ensured visitation rights for nursing home residents. If you are in a nursing home, what this law would do is allow you to designate one person that is a steady visitor. So regardless of what happens during a pandemic, you would be allowed to see this one visitor by law. Individuals with disabilities, we passed a kind of a revolutionary law here because it was interesting. We had a member that has dealt with organ transplant. This is HB 756, and it had a matching bill, Senate Bill 642. And this would not allow for people with Down syndrome to be discriminated against on the donor transplant list. Currently, policies, if someone has Down syndrome, they are automatically knocked off of the transplant list. That would make that illegal in North Carolina, so they would be entitled to an organ transplant the same as anyone else. Some things that we dealt with in government operations or overreach and pro-life protections. We passed 3 bills that were vetoed. First was the emergency authority of the governor. And I'll speak a little bit more about what came out of the budget with this. That was HB 264. That was vetoed. We also passed a bill that would protect donor privacy of charitable nonprofits. Currently, nonprofits do not have to disclose who contributes to them. This bill would protect that privacy, and that was vetoed by the governor. We also passed a bill that would prevent abortion based on race, gender, and Down syndrome, HB 453. That was vetoed by the governor. Some things in the law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders category. We passed a law that would increase penalties for breaking into police vehicles. Several of the members had problems in their district with folks actually going to various police departments or fire stations and vandalizing the equipment. This would increase those penalties. We also passed a bill that would improve policing and accountability in law enforcement, meaning making it very clear what the procedures are when reporting an incident of violence. So it's very clear what information is there and how it should be handled. We also allowed for free classes for UNC system campus police. The closest thing regionally that would affect us would be the ASU Police Department. This makes sure that they are entitled to get their renewal classes for free. Some things that we did with election integrity, making sure that our elections are free and fair. We passed a prohibiting secret settlements used to undermine the state election law. This is basically when a lawsuit takes place that there has to be more people involved than just the Attorney General to make sure that the settlement is fair to all. That was vetoed by the governor. We also set Election Day as a firm deadline to accept absentee ballots because what we experienced in the last election cycle, we saw that ballots were coming in and then that period was extended after the election due to mail running so slowly. What this does is set a firm deadline. That was also vetoed by the governor. We also prohibited election officials from accepting private donations. We found all over the country that private money was being sent in via grants to assist in the election process, and boards of elections could apply for this private money. What this would do would prohibit that act because it deals with the election process, and we wanted to keep it fair and transparent. That was also vetoed by the governor. We had several bills that dealt with energy policy. One that I felt like would really affects our area. We would prevent local governments from banning natural gas. Basically what this says is the law would entitle a consumer, a resident, to be able to tap any utility that's available to them and would not allow the local municipality to ban particular utilities to ensure that we have a free energy market and that the consumer can have whatever utility is available to them and make that not a local-based decision. That was also vetoed by the governor. Not only did we deal with the state budget process, we dealt with the COVID relief money that came down from Washington. And just to give you some context on the size of these numbers, we allocated $1.7 billion in federal COVID-19 relief monies in House Bill 196, and we also distributed $6.4 billion in federal ARP, that's American Recovery Plan, COVID relief funding in Senate Bill 172. And this is on top of our normal state budgeting process, and it was all put together into one document. Some things dealing with rural infrastructure and farming. We passed what is called the Annual Farm Act. This was Senate Bill 605. The big thing that affects District 94 is that we made some changes to timber sales because there was problems with theft. Folks timbering property that technically was not theirs. So we created a system of marking and tagging timber to where there is a paper trail that deals with timber sales to protect the landowner to where they don't have their timber stolen. Things dealing with law and order. We increased penalties for looting and rioting in HB 805. This was vetoed by the governor. We also changed the laws dealing with catalytic converter thefts, Senate Bill 99. That increases the penalties if you do steal catalytic converters, which is on the rise. Again, that kind of goes up and down. We also passed a bill that cracked down on credit card skimming devices. This actually happened to me personally. My credit card was skimmed at a gas station in a neighboring county, and I did not find out about it until there were several charges on the credit card. This would increase the penalties for you even possessing one of those to try to slow down on the use of those. Some other things that were interesting that stood out, we improved the care of pregnant inmates in our prisons. We actually had a policy that would allow for shackling of prisoners while they were giving birth. This law eliminates that practice. And we also expanded expungement eligibility. This is where someone has committed a felony and has been convicted of a felony, but it's years and years and years ago. I'm talking decades. And the law was very narrow on the ability for them to waive that off of their record. This expands that eligibility some, so those folks can get back into the workforce. The next segment that I want to talk to you about are actual budget items. So the first part that I'm going to deal with the state budget is the salaries. Some highlights of our salary packages that went out for our state employees and teachers and retirees across the state. In this biennium budget, we provided a 5% pay raise for state employees and an average 5% for teachers over the 2 years of the biennium. It implements a $15 per hour wage for all non-certified public school personnel and community college staff. Who fits in that category are folks like your custodians, your bus drivers, to ensure that they are getting $15 an hour. And this should help with our shortages that we're experiencing in those areas. Dealing with COVID money and also some testing bonuses, we will provide $2,800 in bonuses to most teachers using the federal funds that were distributed down from Washington. Now, how these bonuses pan out for state employees is $1,500 will go to state employees who make less than $75,000, and $1,000 will go to state employees who make more than $75,000. We also included $1,500 bonuses for law enforcement, correctional officers and staff, and 24-hour residential or treatment facility employees. The biggest teacher increase that is above the base increases that we put falls in this category. We set aside $100 million that would be reoccurring for a new state-funded teacher salary supplement fund. This is focused on low wealth and rural counties. This is actually sending money down to the school system to supplement the local supplements that are paid out. How does this affect District 94? In Wilkes, this equates to over $1,400 additional to the local supplement paid to the teachers annually. And in Alexander County, it is a little over $2,200 additional. This is a huge difference in some of our smallest counties. You would see a jump in Allegheny County, for example, from $500 that they pay annually, which is basically all they can afford, and they will be receiving almost $4,200 additional annually due to this new fund that is set up. For our state retirees, we are giving a 5% state and teacher retiree cost of living adjustment bonus over the biennium, 2.5% each year of the biennium. And then we adjusted the salary-based schedule for correctional, probation, and parole officers because of recruitment and retention issues there. Some things that we did dealing with the business climate. We invested over $1 billion for broadband expansion across North Carolina. We want to make sure that every inch of North Carolina is covered by broadband internet. Something that I worked on personally, dealing with the ARP money, was $46 million will be going to infrastructure at motorsports facilities. This is dealing with our racetracks all over the state, and I'll give you some more details on how that affected the North Wilkesboro Speedway when I talk about the local items. Some things dealing with our savings account at the state level, which we call a rainy day fund, and your taxes. Some things that we changed with the tax code. We increased the zero tax bracket for a married couple to $25,500. This will really benefit the working poor because many people do not hit that income bracket, so they're basically paying no income tax on their income, but increases it for everyone. So the first $25,500 that you make as a married couple will not be taxed. We also brought the rainy day fund savings to $4.25 billion at the end of the biennium. This will actually be the largest in state history, and this is the state savings account. So this is kept in place for disasters or if something happens economically. We cut the personal income tax rate from 5.25% to 3.99%. We also increased the child tax deduction by $500 per child. We allowed businesses that were impacted by COVID-19 to deduct the expenses paid by the Paycheck Protection Program, what is otherwise known as PPP loans. We also eliminated the state income tax on military pensions to try to become a more military-friendly state to try to attract those retirees to stay right here in North Carolina versus moving to another state. And over time, we will be phasing out the corporate tax. Some things in education that we spent money on. The biggest change that we made was dealing with the lottery fund for school capital projects. Currently, the lottery fund goes to many different things: scholarships, pre-K, non-certified personnel in the schools, but a big component is capital. And we changed the policies on that to where you're going to have over $800 million from the lottery fund going to school capital projects, $200 million to the school capital fund, and also $80 million to a newly created repair and renovations fund. How this impacts the district is currently small systems receive based on ADM, meaning the amount of kids that they have in the system. This reformats that to where they get a guaranteed $300,000 annually for repair and renovations on top of what they currently receive with ADM. And it also reforms the school capital fund to where systems can apply for monies to build schools. That was narrow for just really small systems. We have expanded it to where it's basically open to any system across the state. Also, we added Fayetteville State University to the North Carolina Promise Program, and this guarantees $500 tuition at these schools. This will be the fourth institution that is added, and they were very excited about that. Another piece that was targeted towards teachers was that we ended the requirement that teachers pay a $50 fee for a substitute teacher to cover their classes on what are called personal leave days. We were one of the few states that had that sort of policy. So a teacher, if they need a personal leave day to do a closing on their house or to attend a funeral, all they have to do is cite a reason for taking that day, and they will not be deducted anything from their paycheck. Some things that we did in the budget dealing with health care. We extended postpartum Medicaid services for new mothers for a full year. Currently, it's just for a few months. This would allow it to be for a full 12-month period. We also increased the direct support personnel wages to $15 an hour. These are folks that serve the elderly and most medically fragile and the intellectual and developmentally disabled. These are your home health care folks that go into the homes, and this will guarantee them $15 per hour. We also invested over $16 million to combat the opioid crisis, which is continuing to be a plight in our state, especially western North Carolina. Some things that we did in the budget for military and veterans. We invested $2 million to increase the number of scholarships awarded to eligible children of disabled veterans. We also expanded veteran employment preferences for state jobs to include members of the National Guard. Some highlights from the agriculture part of the budget. We provided $129 million in COVID relief funds from the federal funds to help food banks, meat, swine, and dairy producers because of the supply chain issues that they've suffered from. We also put an additional $8 million for Farmland Preservation Program, which is a program which ensures that farmland stays farmland in North Carolina. Some highlights from transportation. We included $346 million over the base budget for highway maintenance and highway preservation activities. It also funds in the budget a new inmate litter crew pilot project. We found during COVID, because the inability for our state prisoners to get out and deal with the roads and the contracted entities that deal with the trash on the roads, we're experimenting with a new program that can go through the county level, where county sheriffs can use inmates at the jail to be able to pick up trash along the roadways. Some other things that were in the budget. First, I was telling you about the emergency powers granted to the governor. We did have a provision in the budget, which the governor has signed, that limits the governor's emergency powers by requiring approval from the Council of State to extend a statewide emergency beyond 30 days. We've never experienced a statewide emergency like we have with the pandemic. Normally they're weather related. We are technically still in a state of emergency issued by the governor. This would take effect in 2024 to where we can assure that there are checks and balances in state government when there is an emergency situation deemed. We also, in there, prohibit collusive settlements by the Attorney General, basically meaning that the Attorney General cannot settle lawsuits on his own, that he has to communicate with the actual folks that are the keeper of the purse, the General Assembly. And another piece in there, we included the Firefighters Fighting Cancer Act. This is $7.5 million in it for a new insurance program for firefighters that have been diagnosed with cancer. This is something that has been worked on the entire time that I've been in the General Assembly. So a very important piece out of the budget there. Now, the last component that I would like to share with you in this annual update is the actual local impact of the state budget and some things that are happening in District 94, Wilkes, and Alexander counties out of the budget. Part of the budget included $1 million for Alexander County water and sewer infrastructure for their industrial park. It included $3.6 million for Alexander County water and sewer project in the Bethlehem community, $630,000 for Alexander High School tennis and track repair, $1.2 million for the town of Taylorsville for 2 water and sewer projects, $250,000 for the town of Taylorsville for transportation grants, $500,000 to the town of North Wilkesboro to deal with the water tower that is in the industrial park, $400,000 for the town of Wilkesboro to deal with bridge repairs that was from a tropical storm with a bridge that connects the Woodfield neighborhood to the Country Club neighborhood. This is matching monies for reimbursements that they are receiving from federal disaster relief. $350,000 to the town of Wilkesboro for the community commons bathrooms so they can eliminate the porta-johns that they're currently using. $362,500 to the county of Wilkes for a transportation grant to deal with transportation needs that they would have. $5 million for Wilkes Central High School athletic repairs and renovations for their athletic facilities, primarily for a gym. $2.5 million for Wilkes County Schools athletic facilities, and that money would go to the other 3 high schools for various needs that they have, from tennis courts to bleachers to track repairs. $5.5 million goes to the Wilkes Community College system, which does affect 3 counties, for new construction, repairs, and renovations, basically capital funds. $7.5 million for the Catawba Valley Community College system, which Alexander is part of, for capital needs. $100,000 for the Department of Insurance to set up a Northwest Regional office, so we would actually have an office available here from the Department of Insurance. $50,000 to the town of North Wilkesboro Farmers Market for improvements. And I think they're going to primarily focus on the mural redo on the wall there at the Farmers Market. We also included $500,000 for Wilkes Recovery Revolution. This is an entity here locally that deals with folks that have substance abuse issues and are dealing with it, and it's a residential program. We also included $18 million for the North Wilkesboro Speedway. This money is basically working like an economic incentive. Part of it will deal with the water and sewer infrastructure needs that are at the track, but it also can be used for improvements to the track, and that was out of the federal recovery monies. $3 million for a new Rendezvous Mountain State Park. We will be converting this current state forest to state park. A chunk of it, then part of it will stay state forest to help with tourism growth in Wilkes. This will be actually a subsidiary of Stone Mountain State Park, and these monies will help with road improvement and campsite development and RV spot development at Rendezvous Mountain. And we also included $100,000 for the Blue Ridge Opportunity Commission, which is an entity that serves multiple counties and helps the needy in our region. So the budget actually funds for Alexander and Wilkes counties. It totals over $50 million that will be coming into District 94 out of the budget. I appreciate the few minutes to share with you just the highlights of what is going on. I could talk with you for more than probably a couple of hours if I went into absolutely everything. If you want to see more information about the budget specific highlights and the highlights from the long session, you can go to jeffreyelmore.com. And I do want to thank River Street Productions for allowing me to do this public service announcement and share with you the actions at the North Carolina General Assembly. And as always, if you ever need to contact my office about an issue or a concern that you have, the contact information will be on the screen. And I appreciate the time to share with you.